Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Spirit Rescue Talk. I am your host, Amy Major. And of course, you remember my co-host, Cynthia Maroon. We don't have Jordan with us this morning. Halloween decided to make her a little sick, as the energy of Halloween is really intense, as all of you know. And I hope all of you did have a wonderful Halloween, a safe one, hopefully, as well. We don't want anyone getting sick out there. I had a really great time, but I have to say, I was out trick-or-treating with my 14-year-old son, and it decided to be really, really windy. And so, like, everyone was getting blown away, and it was, but, traditional New England weather. We were just so happy it wasn't snowing. So we're cool with any weather that we get that isn't freezing. So yeah, I had a really great time. Hopefully all of you had a great time as well. And I wanted to mention this, like, many of you really get very hyped up about ghosts and monsters and, haunted locations and the dark during the Halloween season, and kind of like turn it off as soon as November 1st comes around. But those of us on Spirit Rescue Talk and our guests never turn it off, because we live it every day. And we work within it, we teach it, we exist within the fascination of paranormal, metaphysical, and spiritual phenomenon. So we're involved with this 365, except if we are a sick day. But for those 365, we're constantly trying to educate, help people understand about this unique phenomenon of all the spiritual activity. So we, of course, on November 1st, continue this work. Halloween doesn't turn it off for us. So we're really excited to begin again, to start more information about, Spirit Rescue, obviously, with the show and all the guests that come on that had a lot of experience in Spirit Rescue. So please stick with us throughout the year. We're going to have more and more guests on the show, and it's going to be a lot of fun talking about all sorts of topics. Not necessarily everything that goes, bump in the night. We're not here to scare you. We're here to create awareness. And there might be a lot of love, light, and I would say lighter, brighter topics that we discuss, but they're all connected to spirituality. And I always tell people ghosts really are spiritual. Just because they carry a lot of baggage and a lot of heavier, dense energy doesn't mean that they're not spirit. And it doesn't mean that they don't carry light inside of them. And it doesn't mean that we can't get, lighter in topics as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun over the next year, and I hope that you guys join with us. But today we have an amazing guest with us on today, Rev Shiela Scott, who is an amazing spiritualist, reverend, and minister. I've been a spiritualist for 22 years myself, so it's always really wonderful to connect with more spiritualists as well. She does a lot of healing. She does reading. She does hypnotherapy, connecting to the higher self. She just has a wealth of knowledge that we really wanted to bring her on to be able to discuss her situations and stories that she's had, somewhere dabbling into the spirit rescue of sorts, getting involved in the work that she does. But before we do discuss anything, we really would like her to kind of come on and give us a background on her history, where she's been, and how she got to where she is today. So I'd love to introduce Reverend Shiela Scott. How are you this morning? It's really great to have you on the show.
Welcome. Oh, thank you, Reverend Amy. It's lovely to be here. I really appreciate it. It's a real honor, actually. And thank you very much. And hi, Cynthia, too. How did I get started? Well, I was always a little bit spiritually, psychically inclined when I was growing up. I had I nearly drowned when I was 3,
Wow.
and I had to make the decision. I had to make the decision to either stay or go. It's a story in itself, but I decided to go, stay. And I fell into a river during spring flood. And so I was like bobbing along the river, and I went under, came up, went under. And I knew if I went under a third time, I wasn't coming back. So I went under the third time, of course, went down to the bottom of the river, time stopped. And I was said, like I could see the white light coming, and I heard a voice saying, well, you can either stay or go, but you'll only have to do this all over again. And I was like, oh. Okay. Um, so I, but I guess, sorry, I missed a part. When I went under the water, I realized my little 3-year-old self got shoved to the side, and I realized I was this ancient soul that had been like forever. And I was stuck in this little 3-year-old body, and it was really,
Mm.
and so I had to decide whether I was going to live or die, or my physical body was going to die. So I said, okay, I guess I'll stay. And as soon as I did that, I shot up to the surface and I was bobbing along. And my little dog was running along the bank beside me, barking. And I called her. She jumped in and grabbed her collar and she pulled me to shore.
Wow.
So, and this really wild thing about karma was that 3 years prior, my dad had rescued that puppy from a tributary of the river that I was nearly drowned in. Somebody had thrown a burlap bag into the river, and my dad happened to walk down, as they called it, the little bridge, and this is in St. Thomas, Ontario. Um, and he looked down and he saw this burlap bag was moving. And so he ran down and picked it up, and there's a little tiny puppy in it. And so he saved her. So,
Wow.
that was spirit working. I
Oh,
truly believe. So,
Yes.
um, anyway, since I think when I was a child, I had this openness that other people didn't have. And I knew things and I could feel things that other people couldn't have, or didn't have, sorry, excuse me. And, I grew up with it. So I grew up with this real sensitivity. Both my parents were medical. My mother was a nurse midwife. My dad was a doctor. And so I went into nursing. That's what I knew. So I went to university for a little bit and I said, no, this is not for me. And then I went into nursing college program and graduated, tried to put my spiritual stuff to the side, but it kept coming up. It does, right? It's like, can't ignore it. Um, Moved to Toronto. There's a few things that happened there that are not relevant to the story, but I eventually found the Spiritual Science Institute of Toronto, which had been open at that point for 14 years. It's no longer around, very sadly. It's just not. And the medium who created it unfortunately passed away. I was really lucky to complete a 3-year part-time program, which was based on spiritualism. And it was like the world just had opened up for me. During our training, we had to do spirit rescue. But the training that we were taught was that we had to allow, it was suggested or recommended that we allow the spirit come into our body and then reprogram, like process their trauma, and then let them go to the light. And I thought to myself, I can't do that. I that's too traumatizing. They said, well, you can do it mentally, but it was really sort of this is the old spiritualism.
That's the old way. I've heard of that before. That's
Yeah,
the very old way of doing it.
I won't do that. So
No.
I sort of did the mental mediumship, which is what I sort of focused on. um, well, any questions about what I was saying, or
It's amazing. I just can't believe that, you had that moment. But I think it was really fascinating to hear you at 3 years old knew you were an infinite being shoved into a tiny little body in that instant. What 3-year-old would think of that? Maybe
yeah.
plenty, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, literally, my ancient self, came in and shoved my 3-year-old identity to the side and sort of really became fully present. And that's when I realized, oh yeah, I'm in this physical form now, and geez, it's awfully awkward, So that was it. And anyway, it was just a bizarre feeling, and I try to explain it, but it's difficult. It's difficult to explain. But that opened I think my channels, for
Oh yeah.
connecting with spirit. Um, uh, the very first spirit rescue I did was there was an entity in a. May I continue? I'm sorry, I'm just hogging the
No,
conversation.
absolutely.
Yes, keep
I
going.
love it. I love
We were second year of the program at Spiritual Science Institute. I had a friend, I'll call her Jane. That's not her real name. I'm using pseudonyms here. Had a friend called Marianne, who was channeling. It was 1987, and the book Out on a Limb came out, like Shirley MacLaine. So everybody was fascinated with channeling, and I was I wasn't quite sure, you know.
it.
So she says, "Oh, she's channeling, and let's go and listen to her channel." And part of me was kind of going, "I don't know. There's something odd here. There's something not right." And anyway, Marianne, we met Marianne. It was a February night. We had freezing rain. We had everything. I was trying to find a place to park. We were an hour late, and we showed up, and she said, "I thought you weren't coming." I walked into like her apartment. It was actually a subdivided Victorian home. A lot of them in Toronto. And I walked in, and it felt like somebody was sitting on my head. And I went,
Yep.
"What is this?
Mm-hmm.
What is this?" And I felt immediately uncomfortable. Um, I felt like somebody was right behind me too, like just like literally breathing on my neck, kind of thing. So anyway, we sat down, and there were two chairs, and then there was a futon, and I sat on the futon. When I go into meditation, I go in and out very quickly. So Marianne went into meditation. We went into meditation. I was sitting cross-legged, on the futon. I came out of meditation, and beside Marianne, there was this shimmering brown form, male. It was like a shimmer and a brown, but short. But I knew it was male. And so I mentally said hello, because everybody else was still in meditation. And I saw it turn its head, or his head, look at me, run across the room, jump on me, start pummeling me with his fists were going right through me. And I went, and it was such a shock. So I shot the white light through me, because we learned how to use the white light, pushed him back, and mentally said, "You stay right there. Do not move. I'll deal with you in a while." And I thought, the nerve of this man, really. So when everybody came out of their meditation, I said, "Look, we've got a big problem here. This is, I don't know who you're channeling, but this, I don't think it's this guy. We've got a problem. He's, got a very angry spirit." So Marianne decided she was going to be the medium. I said, don't want to talk to this person because he attacked me. So, believe me, he was swearing a lot and yelling at us, telling to get us to get the F out of his home. And, excuse me. And, we kept saying, "Your mother is here, your mother's," because we called, the white light, and we kept saying, "Your mother is here, turn around, your mother is here, your mother," and he kept saying, "No, she effing isn't," and it was really abusive. And eventually I think somebody said, because we were learning, because we were students, asked the mother to call his name. And as soon as she did that, he turned around and just went gone. And it was like the house breathed this sigh of relief. It was like, oh my God, and he thought, when we did ask him, he thought it was 1947. Meanwhile, it was 1987. Um, so but anyway, the house breathed a sigh of relief. Marianne started crying, because she said she and her boyfriend had moved in like 3 or 4 months prior, and her boyfriend worked nights. And ever since then, she would get up 3 or 4 times in the night, checking all the locks in the windows to make sure they were closed, because she felt unsafe. And I said, "Well, I know why you felt unsafe. You had this entity who was probably yelling at you the whole time." So that was the first one that I learned from that.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you would have such a forceful first time with earthbound spirits. But that's usually kind of what happens is, when they're still in that spirit form and they're still very much attached to their physical experience. He's there in crisis going, why is everybody in my home? I have to get them all out. Mentally, he still thinks it's 1947. So, it doesn't give, it doesn't give an excuse to attack somebody the way that he has. But at the same time, you have to remember, why are they earthbound? What is he holding? What has he gone through? What's his temperament? And quite often they're quite aggressive.
Yeah. Well, Marianne saw liquor bottles all over the floor when she was around him. So probably died from alcoholism, but just extremely angry. But it was such a relief when he left. It was palpable. You could actually feel it.
Right.
The energy change, as you both know, you could they finally leave, it's like, oh, thank God. The house almost sighed. It was so amazing. Shall
But
I
how
continue?
easy it was just to help, how easy it was to help him cross. All it took was his mother.
Yeah, we were told, call on someone that they recognize, call on a family member.
Right.
And I could see his mom standing in the light going, come on, but finally when she heard his name, when he heard his name, he just went like instantly. So
It is instant. There is no time on the other side. So what may have been instant for you may have been a 5-minute conversation between he and his mother to finally be like,
True.
oh, really here, I can really trust this. And she's probably counseled him already and said, okay, it's time to cross into the light. But it's like instant for us because we're on a denser level. So it's amazing how fast it happens.
Yeah.
Sheila, I'm curious to know, like Amy was saying, that's a pretty intense, first experience or exposure to spirit rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Was it off-putting to you? Did it concern you? Did it kind of make you more curious about how things operate that experience happened? Or was it I want to do this more? This feels very purposeful,
I'm not sure she felt that way, but
well, I don't know. Let's ask.
Well, that's a great question. I was actually very curious afterwards and I was very happy that we were able to release this very traumatized spirit, very damaged spirit. That was like, to me, that was wonderful because, well, like my nursing background is like we try to alleviate suffering, right? So this spirit was suffering, and earthbound spirits do suffer. They are suffering, whether we acknowledge it or not. It was just sort of dovetailed what I was, doing in my nursing career, was to alleviate suffering. And at that time, I was working with Covenant House Toronto. I was doing street outreach work. They had a van, and we would go around it was for street youth. So it's again like doing almost like rescue work, but on the streets of Toronto, because we had a lot of we had a big population of street youth, and it's gotten worse, much worse since then. So it was part of it just sort of fit in with what I was doing, and helping others, help people find safety, whatever they needed. So um, I felt a great sense of happiness, actually, and I think that triggered, the rest of, spirit was going, do more of that, do more of that. Really, as if I don't have enough to do,
I know.
But when they see you can, they will absolutely ask for you to do more.
Well, yeah. And the same year, I have another story about the same year, 1987. A friend of mine, I'll call her Susan, and another friend, I'll call her Anne. Her parents had bought this huge coach house in Coburg, Ontario, and it used to be servants' quarters. At the time, it was 125 years old. So it was all brick, it was really beautiful. So she invited Anne and myself to go. And we got there. Susan drove, and I'm allergic to cats. So I said, I don't, they said, we have 2 cats. They said, but they never go into this one room. And I went, okay, that's odd. You know, you can this one room, it's my sister's, Krista's room. The cats never go in there. I went, why don't the cats go in that? And there's something going on there. Anyway, so um, Anne and Susan were in the next room. I was in this room, Krista's room, and we settled down. I went to bed, and I had a sense that there was somebody in the room. I woke up, and there's this little. She was a maid, but she was very young, and she had the little hat on and the pinafore, and she's coming around the bed. She goes, "My name is Anna. Wake up, my name is Anna." And I went, and I jumped back and hit my head on the headboard because it just shocked me so much. And I said, "Oh." And then they heard me in the next room. They said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'll tell you in the morning." I didn't do the rescue then. Um, I told um, Susan and Anne, Anna was the spirit. And the mother heard this and she thought this was hilarious, that there's no such thing as a ghost. You had a ghost in your room? And I went, but interesting. Susan's sister Krista would sleepwalk in that room, and she would find herself rocking in the rocking chair in the room, and they would hear her talking to somebody in her sleep, and it was like, you don't think that's odd? And she would never do it anyplace else, like when she was visiting. So anyway, I let it go, and I felt kind of bad. And then 5 months later, I got a call from Susan saying, "What was the name of that spirit that you um, met?" And I said, "Oh," I had to think. I said, "Oh, Anna." And she said, "Because my sister keeps hearing the name Anna being repeated, and you know, she thinks there's something in her room." I said, "Well, there is. There, there's a spirit there." And I said, we need to send her on." And I said, "I'll do it distantly," and because I heard spirit say, "You can do this at a distance." And I went, "Really?" So I invoked their help, and they went to the room because I'd been there and I knew they went to the house, and they assisted this little maid who probably died of an infectious disease or something, because everybody died of an infectious disease in, the 1800s. They assisted her in the light, and I actually sort of saw that in my third eye. And I told my friend Susan, I said, ask your sister Krista how she feels now when she's sleeping in that room. And from that point on, there was no further contact. So the spirit had left. And the cat started going in the room.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to be physically there. Energy is everywhere.
Yeah. I do my work now all by distance. I don't have to go. I can't go. It's just too much to travel to some of these places. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Spiritually, there's like no separation on the other side.
That's right.
Everything's thought away. So
yep.
Distance work, it's hard for people to imagine that when they're in like a physical realm, because everything takes time. So I know for people that don't do this work, it's very difficult for them to imagine. And some people might even think you're scamming or it can't really work. But the truth is, if you really understand spirit and you understand that dimension, it's like there isn't the separation. You don't use physical legs to go anywhere over there. Right? You use your consciousness, right? So, but I understand why it's hard to accept.
Yeah, people don't get, they just, well, how can you not? I said, I just ask spirit for help. I ask the angels, I ask the guides, and they do the heavy lifting, as I say.
Nice.
They're the ones that do it. So
I know you had mentioned that you do a lot of super conscious work with the higher self. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that.
Oh, thanks. I was certified as a hypnotherapist in 2004 by the National Guild of Hypnotists. They've now changed the name to consulting hypnotist. I went on to do my master's training, so I'm a master hypnotist. But I never felt, and I studied spirit release therapy, actually, hypnosis. So people who had attached entities, I had an experience that, thank God, I knew what to do. When I was working with somebody, but there was something missing. Subconscious work, subconscious hypnosis is great. Hypnotists get fantastic results, but I always felt there was something missing. So when I heard about it, was called the Simpson Protocol. I learned the Simpson Protocol in 2021. And then the instructor who was certified as a Simpson Protocol instructor developed she called it an upgraded Simpson Protocol, which she got permission to do from the creator, Inez Simpson, who actually lives on Vancouver Island. So she's a Canadian. And so I took that, and it was like, I went, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for like ever, like working with the super conscious and, help people move through their problems quickly. And so it usually takes between 1 and 3 sessions. We have to go to the superconscious via the subconscious, so down into the subconscious and up to the superconscious, but they're working in tandem. So, and people can have remarkable, results with it. And, I say, why spend 20 years in therapy when you can have 3 sessions with me? So,
Yeah.
pretty bold statement, I know, but it's I really don't push it. I just sort of say, this maybe work faster for you. So issues of self-confidence, um, uh, issues of physical health issues, it's just about anything that you can think of can be like the superconscious work. Hypnosis can help on some level. And what people don't understand about hypnosis is that the hypnotist does not have like magical powers, and I can't make somebody go into hypnosis. You know, I have a lady I'm going to be working with, and she says, I have control issues. I said, you know what? That's okay. Like, I can't make you do anything you don't want to do. I can make suggestions. And if you want to follow my suggestions, that's great. If you don't, that's great. But if you don't want to follow my suggestions, uh, that's okay too. So, it's not like hypnosis is not sleep. It's not magic. It is something that we are actually in probably 50 to 100 times a day, like daydreaming, prayers, concentrating on something. When you get on the internet, you think, oh, I'll just be on for a little bit, and like 3 hours go by, you've lost track of time. That is a form of hypnosis. So, or highway hypnosis, you're driving and you're thinking about something, driving, and you miss your cutoff. So that is when you're concentrating on something very intensely. So it's just another form of healing that I, for me, and I've studied a lot of forms of healing, including Reiki and integrated energy therapy and emotional freedom techniques. I just found this to be the best technique that works for me.
Wow. I know people have a hard time understanding that they're in hypnosis because I think the expectation is to go deep, almost sleep-like, where you're not to remember anything. When people realize that they're in full control, they somehow make the interpretation that they're not in hypnosis because of that reason.
I've had people say, well, I couldn't have been in hypnosis. I heard every word you said. I said, that does happen. Like, some people hear every word I say. Some people go in and out, like they'll remember parts of it, but, and some people go very deep, and they're in their own, we call it their safe place, and they just hang out. Their conscious mind hangs out in their safe place. It's whatever works for them. And there's no wrong way of doing this. If people can follow my instructions, then they're pretty well guaranteed they're, 98% chance they're going to be in like a true hypnotic state. I have, but there's this myth that somehow the hypnotist has to exert their mental powers over someone, and it doesn't work that way.
I think what contributes to that is the performance hypnosis, where you see people sitting in chairs on a stage and then, and then make them cluck like a chicken and like embarrass themselves, So people, you know what I mean? So like, I understand why people have that expectation, especially if they're not engaging in these type of sessions and they don't have anything to contradict what they're being fed. You know what I mean? So I can understand that, but I wanted to say, I like something that you're saying when you said, why do 20 years of therapy when you can do 3 sessions with me? Because previously I was an addictions counselor for over 20 years. And in doing that work, I found that talk therapy was so limited, because the people impacted by addiction usually have very heavy trauma that they've accumulated in their life, either prior to the addiction or as a result of the addictive lifestyle. And working through that, I just found that trauma, it impacts our mind, it impacts our hearts, but it also lives within the body. And I found talk therapy very limited at being able to kind of relieve people from the body. And it's like it was limited. So I started looking into energetic interventions, which is when I stumbled upon emotional freedom technique. And that's something that you mentioned. And I took different types of trainings with it. And I've had rapid success. And I was like, wow, where has this been all my life? I'm like, energy's the key. You know what I mean? Because when you seriously have a drive to alleviate suffering, then we have this belief, because of the old methods that were popular or mainstream, that healing takes a long time, especially if you've struggled with it for a long time. But the truth is, for me, that is a myth. Just because you've struggled with something for a long time doesn't mean that it's going to take a long time to heal. Depends what modality is being applied, right? So I'm so glad that you practicing your own energetic interventions, that you're promoting kind of like the same message. That's very near and dear to my heart, and I want more people to hear about that. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cynthia, thank you very much. And congratulations on working with EFT. It is amazing. It is amazing. It absolutely works very well. So now I'm trying to think what I was going to say. You mentioned about the like the show hypnosis, the stage hypnosis. That has done, you're right, that has done a tremendous amount of damage for people who think that that's what they're going to be experiencing. And I'll tell you, when I was in university, I went to a hypnosis show. This guy, he's now quite famous in Toronto for doing stage hypnosis. Now he does regular hypnosis. He asked up front, I'm going to ask, like there was probably 100 people in the audience, maybe more. Who wants to come up? Anybody who wants to come up on stage, leave your feet flat on the floor. Anybody who doesn't come up on stage, lift your feet off the floor. Well, no way was I going up there. My feet were off the floor. And so he picked like 30 people out of the that's kept their feet on the floor, brought them all up on stage, and did a bunch of testing to see who were the most suggestible. Right now, you have to understand those people chose to be up there. Okay, right. They chose to be up there. They wanted to be on stage. So there's that part. So they're willing to do what he's saying. So through a series of testing, kind of gimmicky stuff, he whittled it down to about 7 people. Okay. And those people were like, they were rock stars at doing hypnosis, man. He would give a suggestion and they would do it. So they were, pretending they were on a roller coaster, talking like a chicken, making love to their chair. So this isn't all entertainment, right? And his final post-hypnotic suggestion was that when they were leaving and they got to the door, they would stop and put their left shoe on the right foot and the right shoe on the right foot. And we were all watching as they were leaving, and they got to the door, and every single one of them did the post-hypnotic suggestion, put the right shoe in the left shoe, but walked out into the parking lot. Of course, that would wear off. So that is, we all broke out laughing, by the way. So that particular hypnosis is a lot of fun, but it's done a lot of damage for the therapeutic hypnosis. So thank you, Cynthia, for mentioning that. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. You had mentioned before getting involved with hypnosis. Have you done the spirit releasement therapy at all, doing the hypnosis work? Because it's like you were mentioning it, and I just happen to have this book.
That's the book I used. Yeah.
It sits next to me every day. William Baldwin. So I'm like looking at this one. I need to bring it up because you talked about it. And like I said, I've read this in and out. And obviously, Spirit wants us to talk about it today.
Yeah,
we're all wearing the color of the book.
That's right.
That was really interesting. So.
Well, yes, God bless Dr. William Baldwin. And I did get the book. I read it through and through. I did take some sort of training like online, but Dr. Baldwin really did write the opus magnum on spirit releasement. So I'll tell you what happened. I did my past life regression training and my hypnosis training all in 1 year. So basic, and then I had a client come from hypnosis in 2005, and he wanted a past life regression. So he'd also come to me before for other issues, and he was rock star, and he would just go down and like right away, and because he trusted me, right? Because we worked before. And I said to him, and now go back to the lifetime that is the past lifetime that is influencing you now. And I heard him say, I'm not going back there. And it was a like angry voice. And I went, pardon? He says, I'm not going to go back there. And he got more and more. And I said, you're paying me money to have a past life regression. Like, what's up? And he says, it was a horrible life. I'm not going back there. It was terrible. And then he turned his head, opened his eyes, and I realized it wasn't my client. So my first thought was, oh, this is maybe like a sub personality. Okay. So I said, are you a part of, my client? And he goes, no. And he goes, and he says, furthermore, you can't make me leave. You don't know how bad I am. I'm a bad person. I'm going, hey, I believe you absolutely are a bad person. Like, no argument. He says, don't try to make me leave. And I'm going, okay. So I'm thinking, I'm starting to shake at this point. Like because he was really aggressive and he was very threatening. And I thought, if he can make the guy's head move, he can make this body move, right? So I don't want him coming across the room and strangling me.
Yeah.
No. So I said, and I thought, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? Oh, okay. Empathy. You got to use the empathy. So I said to him, can you tell me how you lost your body? And he goes, I don't want to talk about it. I said, really, I really want to hear how you died, like how you lost your body. It must be awful. I did all this sort of empathetic work. And I said, you must, you must have been traumatized, etc. And he goes, well, he said, I was okay, if you really want to know. And he said, I was working this is back in like the 1000s, like, so he like 10, he was working as a serf in on a landlord, a lord's estate. And he was working in the fields, and he was very sick, but he was still working in, they worked him to death, right? They were basically slaves. So he said he came along, and I guess he keeled over, just fell over, and the Lord looked at him, and he took his lance and just like stuck him through the heart and killed him. And I went, wow. That's terrible. That's an awful way to die. But what he did was, as soon as his spirit left his body, he jumped into the feudal lord, and then he'd been hopping bodies like for 1,000 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I said, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. And I think that was the first time you'd ever heard anybody say they were sorry and that there was compassion for him. And we have to remember, we have to be compassionate. So I said, so how did you join my client? Like, what happened? And this is where it gets a little freaky, a little weird. And when I tell the story, people kind of go, oh no, like, So my client said that when he was a young child, like really young, under the age of 3, he was sickly. He was in and out of the hospital like all the time. He had all these health problems. So he said, well, I saw this child and he was sickly and I knew I could help him. I knew I could make him feel better. I went, okay, tell me about that. So when he was 3 and this child was very sick, he jumped into the child's body and the child recovered and got better and was not sick from that point on, and just sort of one of the miraculous recoveries. And I said, so that's really kind. You're not a bad person. You see, you were trying to help my client. You were doing a good thing. And you could see the wheels turning. He was kind of going, oh yeah. And he kept saying how bad he was, and I didn't know how bad he was. And I was like, okay, I believe you. So I said, have you heard about the light? And he goes, sort of. I said, why don't we call in the light and see how you like, just so you can get introduced to it. And he was now, I guess, trusting me more. So we called in the light and I said, do you see it? He said, yes. And he said, do you want to feel like what it feels? Do you just want to get a sense of it? He goes, and he turns around, you can't make me leave, I said, I'm not trying to make you leave. I'm just trying to introduce you to the light. And so I saw that my client's hand reach up and he put his hand into the light. And I said, what does it feel like? And he says, oh, it's nice and warm. Can, can you hear your name called? Can you hear your name? He says, yeah. And I said, do you see people that you recognize? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you go with them, you could always come back and visit. And that's true. Once they go into the light, they become healed and they can come back totally different. Okay. Like he said, okay. So I said, have them reach out their hands to you. Have your friends and family members reach out their hands to you and they will help you. And I saw him reach out again. And then I saw him, my client, lean forward, the physical body, lean forward, and then fell back into the chair and with a sigh. And I said, okay, he's gone. He's gone. And one of the things my client was working on was his anger issues. Where do you think those came from?
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm sure he was probably angry, but this spirit just amplified his anger issues. So that was quite fascinating. I did tell him, and he was so freaked out. Sorry.
How did your client recover? Because having a spirit in them since the age of 3 really takes on a personality, because people become their wounding when they have attachments for that long. Do you know how he adjusted after he had the spirit removed?
I did connect with him, but he was very freaked out by the whole experience.
Oh.
And he said his anger had decreased significantly. I did ask him about it. And he said, I'm not an angry person anymore. And I said, well, I know why. But, it doesn't mean that we don't have anger issues that come up regardless of spirit attachment.
Right.
That happens. But, he did. But after that, he wouldn't talk to me anymore because he said, I can't talk about this. It's too weird. And I said, well, as long as you're feeling better, I've done my job,
Right.
So,
Right.
because I recorded half of it, but I was, the old cassette tapes. I was recording it on a cassette tape, and I got so freaked out I forgot to flip the tape over. But so we got the first half of the conversation, but not the second half. I had to tell him. I said, I'm sorry, I only got the first half. And I said, believe me, the spirit's gone now. He's left. You're okay. So,
Wow.
but anyway, yeah.
It's
Now, was
amazing
that
how often it happens. You know, it's like, I think in the book, William Baldwin explains 90% of the public actually have some form of attachment, not necessarily
Yes.
spirit all the time, but fragmented forms of spirit or
Yeah.
interdimensional spirit. And so I think more people are walking around with something embedded into them, creating suffering. Like, why am I so angry? Why do I feel paranoid? Why do I feel all these hard emotions? And they keep coming up from nowhere. It's like nothing provoked it. It just kind of comes. And I think people can get a sense that maybe it isn't them and that there's something more going on, and we're just sponges and we're absorbing energy around us, which could be spirit, you know, that isn't in the light. Because, you know, spirits told me there's more earthbound spirits walking around than you could possibly imagine. Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. Or
Absolutely. Or more.
So,
Yeah.
Sorry, Cynthia, I know you were going to ask something. I was just like, there's so many.
I think that's a wonderful story. I understand why people would get a little freaked out about a spirit going into a 3-year-old, because we look at our children as the most vulnerable, and they would feel powerless. Like, how do I protect that? So it's very disturbing to hear that, but it's still a really important part of the story. And it showed his, like, you know, whether he intended to or not, but his compassion. Maybe he came at it from a position of power. I can fix this. I can do a better job than these medical doctors. But nonetheless, he still alleviated this poor kid's, you know, suffering at the time. I thought that was a brilliant way to kind of show him that perspective, to get him to start, you know, thinking about that. Because Spirit told me a long time ago that healing actually begins with a change in perspective. And, you know, nothing in your life, the problems don't have to change, but if you see it from a different lens, then, you know, you can start to address the impact of it differently, and then actually lead to resolution. But my question was just, was that your first time with some type of spirit release or attachment removal, that experience?
Yeah, that was the first time. It was totally unexpected.
Wow.
It was totally spontaneous. And that's why it was like, I was like shocked. It was like shaking because, but yeah, you're right. Like, you know, I couldn't do the exorcism. I knew if I tried to do an exorcism, it would be a total disaster. You know how you call it, like, I just felt, don't provoke this spirit, find a gentler way. And because the spirit was telling me, like, don't antagonize him. It'll just be like a war of wills, and it's going to be a yelling match. So I just learned, I did what I thought was best and what I felt a spirit was trying to impress on me, like, go with the empathy, go find out more about his life, how to, like, empathize with how he died. And, how did he join my client? And once he said, oh, my client was a weakling and a sickly child, and, I knew I could help him. And I was like, so you were trying to help my client because you're really not a bad person. And that was the key. That was the key, that you were right, Cynthia, about the different perspective. He started to see a different perspective about himself. So, but yeah,
And you
that
know
was quite
what?
true.
I was just thinking, like, Spirit must think you're really good with angry people, because your first 2 experiences, you had 2 angry people, and you were able to use that love and that heart space and that compassion to help them, you know, transition. And you were able to
Thank
be
you.
grounded about it too, you know, because some people would get really in their mind about it and get very, very anxious, but you were able to be a calm in that storm. You must be very good at that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have learned, I've learned a few things growing up, and also the sense of always being connected with spirit because of my near drowning incident. So, and I was calling on help. I was going mentally going, please help, somebody out there help me, like, because I was like, because he totally caught me off guard, and I thought, this is going to be a disaster if I don't handle this the right way. So the right way was through compassion.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And
Now you had talked about being a spiritualist, obviously with the work that you're doing. Have you ever had a chance to offer something like a rescue circle within spiritualism, or any work that you're doing where groups get together and do a group rescue?
actually, the church that I am affiliated with, and it's in Ajax, which is like about a 20-minute drive east, maybe 25 minutes. Divine Light Spiritualist Church in Ajax, Ontario. I actually taught a like a distant spirit release or rescue course there, and out of that, and I did mention like spirit rescue circles, and the minister started a spirit rescue circle where once a month they would meet and do spirit rescue, because but I don't participate in that because it's a long, I don't have a car, so I have to take the transit, which is a pain in the butt. So I but she started that circle after the class that I taught. And apparently it's been quite successful. And people that have come to the class have had attachments that they were able to release from themselves, which was fantastic, that I heard feedback later.
Wow.
So
Good
yeah.
job,
Wow,
Sheila.
that's
Thank
amazing.
you.
I know here in
Yeah.
the States, United States, I've been trying to get rescue circles in the spiritualist churches for a while, and they're not
Really?
really accepting of it yet. So I'm hoping maybe Canada can influence the United States a little bit more to kind of show, compassion and empathy, and being able to be a true spiritualist by being of service wherever, whether it's somebody that's alive or somebody that's in spirit. So I'm hoping to expand that influence in the United States and around the world to create rescue circles, not only in spiritualist churches, but other religious organizations as well, to kind of bring in that compassion to spirit. So,
Fantastic. Totally support it. Um,
yay!
but you'd be surprised how many spiritualist mediums are actually afraid of doing rescue
Yes,
work.
yes, I'm
They
familiar.
I don't blame them because they haven't had a lot of training in it.
Right.
And my training came from like listening to spirit and also reading as much as I could, and like Dr. Baldwin's book, etc. Um, but it was yeah, it a lot of mediums, they don't want to do it. They're afraid they're going to be possessed or something. And
Right.
when I was doing my training to become a minister, the minister who taught a spirit rescue circle, he taught me about that, and I believe he also taught Reverend Catherine, who's the chief minister at the Divine Light Spiritualist Church. So she was like cued to start a rescue circle, but I don't know of any other spiritualist churches that actually do rescue circles, and I'm kind of shocked
Hmm.
because we should be doing that work. We should absolutely be doing rescue work. So
I agree
so needed.
100%.
Absolutely.
I do. It's amazing. Well, we have learned so much from you just, by having this last hour with you to discuss your scenarios and wonderful history that you have. We so hope that you continue doing the work that you do, because that we need more rescuers. We need more healers in this world. And I do believe the healing work you do transforms people for the rest of their life, and so quickly they can transform from this work. So I applaud everything that you do, and I think it's amazing. And I know a lot of our viewers are going to probably want to reach out and connect. How can they connect with you if they did want to speak with you?
They can email me at it's kind of long, so it's REV, so Rev.Shiela, so SHEILA Scott, SCOTT 888 at gmail.com. So that's my email. And feel free to give that to anybody who asks you. I don't mind that being given out for anybody who needs help or has questions or anything along those lines.
Mhm. Is there a website or Facebook page or anything where they can look you up?
It's a bit long too. So distance dash spirit dash rescue and release.com. Like it's Spirit Rescue and Release.com, but there's a whole bunch of dashes in there. If you do Distant Spirit Rescue, it'll come up on Google, and they can check out my website there. I don't have my picture on the website, but they have the contact information, the email, they can contact me there. Thank you.
Yep. And thank you again so much for coming on and being a guest. I really just love your energy, and I just love everything that you do. And I'm so grateful that you accepted and would come on, and we could all spread the word of Spirit Rescue, because I always talk about community and that we're all, working on the same team. So I'm very, very honored to add you to our team of Spirit Rescuers around the world, and very grateful to have you here as well. And I know a lot of people watching are getting involved in Spirit Rescue and wanting to learn more. So this was a great way to share other experiences, how other people got involved in this work. So thank you again so much for that. I know next week we won't be actually filming. My son is turning 18 next week. So that is a bit of a big thing for us here in the family, but we will be meeting again and having another episode in 2 weeks. So we'll have another amazing guest on. So thank you again, Reverend Scott, for coming on today.
Oh, thank you, Reverend Major. Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And thank you, Cynthia, for your wonderful questions. And I truly appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. Much
You're
gratitude.
welcome.
Thank you.
And if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at spiritrescuetalk@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you if you're interested in being on the show, if you're interested in where we can point you in the right direction for spirit rescue training, right? So just email us. We'd be happy to hear from you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time.